Greetings and thanks for joining me for another edition of Electric Avenue's YouTube updates. This one is a special one because I'm coming to you from my own location, my music domain, and I wanted to kind of give you my thoughts and feelings on of my favorite albums of the year. I do this sort of every year, and I think it's time to get rolling before the year's over. Now, before I get started, I did want to give a few sort of shout outs to things that did not make this list that you're going to be seeing. I'll be doing the top 20. Some things that I really enjoyed that did not make the list but were great albums nonetheless would have been things like the new Bon Iver, which I think Justin's trying to create a new musical language with like folk and R&B put together. It's really great. I love that. I love the new Last Dinner Party album. I thought it was no sophomore slump. I just it didn't make my list, but a little more theatrical than the first album, but I really, really enjoyed it. From the Pyre and The Scythe is one of my favorite songs of the year, if not probably my favorite. I also loved the new Ivy album, which was sort of a tribute to Adam Schlesinger, who'd passed away during COVID. They took some of his songs that he'd been working on and kind of filled them in and sort of released a new album for him. The new Geese and Cameron Winter albums. These people are incredibly talented and have a lot of energy, and it's going to be interesting to see where those projects go. I actually enjoyed Cameron's solo project a little more than the band because I think he's really, when he's kind of sitting at a piano and sort of um, being that kind of slurry, off the cuff kind of singer, I really enjoyed that. But they're both great. Kate LeBon and her new album that sounds quite a lot like the Cocteau Twins. If you like the Cocteau Twins, I would definitely check that out. Underworld had a great new album. I mean, they've been around for 35 years, doing a lot of their sort of ambient electronic stuff. Very like stream of consciousness, but beautiful. Destroyer's new album, Dan Bayar, from long time from the New Pornographers, but he's just a really great singer songwriter. Is a very is unique style, always very unique. Other albums I really enjoyed: the new Tom York and Mark Pritchard. I thought it was another great spin-off project for Tom to do. The new Nico Case album, I thought she sounds as great as ever. Wolf Alice had a great album this year. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Rialto, a band that hadn't made an album in 25 years, have a new sort of catchy UK kind of pop rock project that I really enjoyed. The new Garbage album I enjoyed. The new Marina album. Ed Harcourt's last album was really great. What was it called? El Magnifico. Or sorry, Orphic. Orphic is the new one for this year. So anyway, quite a few sort of that I wanted to name check there. But let's get started with the top 20 because you haven't got all day, and neither do I. And frankly, some of these get quite long. So I'm just going to sort of give shout outs. Number 20, Jeff Tweedy, Twilight Override. 30 songs from the Wilco frontman. I loved the last Wilco, the big album they did, which was Cruel Country was amazing. Cousin was great, also produced by Kate LeBon. But this, 30 songs and really beautiful songwriting. I know that there's a lot of attention being paid to Lou Reed Was My Babysitter. That song is kind of funny, it's energetic, very sort of Velvet Underground, kind of sort of paying homage to that. But songs like Wedding Cake, Out in the Dark, Throwaway Lines is just a beautiful, beautiful little song. Even songs Stray Cats are playing in Stray Cats in Spain. At first, you're like, is he talking about the band Stray Cats or is he talking about like actual stray cats? And I think he's talking about the band. He's talking about like pompadours and stuff like that, and how people were screaming in the street and whatever. Anyway, great album. I think Jeff is just like a great observational writer. Probably like the Dylan-esque character of our generation. I mean, I used to always kind of like Wilco albums, but I never loved them, and I think that I'm kind of finally growing into them after all this time. So thank you, Wilco fans, for keeping me keeping me plugged in on them. All right, number 19. This was kind of a shock, I think, for some people. Peter Murphy and Silver Shade. Um, I don't know if this album is going to be seen as highly critically as I see it, but I think this is Peter's best work in like 30 years. And it's, as far as solo goes, anyway, I think his voice is in incredible form. If you hear what he's doing with his voice and the energy that's there, and I think this is a man in his mid 60s, is pretty incredible. And also, and I don't know how much of that is AI. I mean, the funny thing is, not funny, he couldn't do the tour after he made this, release this, because he was too ill or recovering from God knows what. He's had a lot of problems. But I thought the album was really excellent. Trent Reznor guest stars on 3 tracks. And the last track, Let the Flowers Grow, features none other than Boy George with one of his best vocal performances in probably 15, 20 years. So, Silver Shade by Peter Murphy is my number 19. Um, who knew? In 2025. My number 18, Lady Gaga and Mayhem. I got a lot of sort of gothic pop stuff on my list this year. This was, I think, probably her best pop record since maybe Born This Way. I mean, I sort of enjoyed Chromatica, but I think this was edgier. Her singing was more plugged in. The songwriting was sharper. It was a little darker. I thought Abracadabra was a great sort of like earworm of a song. I thought Disease was a great pop single. I don't know why that didn't really set the world on fire, and people, it was almost like they just wanted to hate her just to hate her. It's kind of like what's happening with Taylor Swift a little bit at the moment, where she's kind of getting the backlash. And while Taylor's album did not make my list, I did actually enjoy that album. As far as like, I thought this is no better or worse than Midnight's was, and I, thought that was a decent pop record. But this is really fantastic. Even a song like Don't Call Tonight is just very catchy, and I love that song. I think maybe The Beast is the only song I didn't really love, but Blade is kind of cute and sweet in a way. Blade of Grass. Die with a Smile, her with Bruno Mars, is just, I mean, that's like a master class in like pop singing, whatever, balladry. How Bad Do You Want Me, Zombie Boy, Killa, Perfect Celebrity, Garden of Eden. I just, one earworm after another, and it sounds like it cost a fortune. So, all right, that was number 18. Number 17, Panda Bear and Sinister Grift. So this album, member of Animal Collective, and I would say his last record was the collaboration with Sonic Boom, and it sounded very much like if Brian Wilson was doing kind of experimenting with loops. It's very Beach Boysy kind of inspired retro, and this is very Beach Boysy retro too. I mean, it's just built into his voice, I think. But the music is, while it's sort of like got this very laid back, summery vibe to it. I mean, his voice is not a trained voice, I don't think, but it definitely has this kind of warm, like, kind of friend down the street type voice that you just like hanging out with the person or something. And unfortunately, he was going through a divorce at this time. And so it was one of the many strong divorce records of the year, whether that be a hymn or Jason Isbell's Foxes in the Snow was another great album. And actually, I had a couple albums that did not make my video they were definitely top 20 albums, but because they were only on streaming and not physically available yet, I just don't feel like I can include them until the physical albums are out there on the street. And I hate saying physical albums, just the vinyl records are out there, or the CDs. Um, One would have been Lily Allen, West End Girl, an album that was actually, when I did my list, I first ranked it at number three. That's how highly I thought of that album. And it's a great divorce album, and very sharp and cutting for a pop record. But no vinyl until January. So it'll be on my 2026 list. I'll be like one of those, like, straggling along, pulling it up from the past year. Same thing with De La Soul, their album Cabin in the Sky. Beautiful tribute to Dave Trugoy the Dove, and just also all the guest stars on that, and the vibe of that album. It's so good. It was definitely a top 10 record, and I had to, like, it's going to be 2026 because that comes out in January. Those albums that came late, and so they can collect a lot of streams, and then they're like, okay, we'll put the vinyl out like next year. So sorry about that. That's why they're not on the list. So okay, but they are in our hearts. Yeah, number 16, Sharon Van Etten and the Attachment Theory, and the album Sharon Van Etten and the Attachment Theory. So there have been other Sharon Van Etten albums that I've really enjoyed, but this one, for some reason, it's a little darker. It's a little more post-punk, kind of 80s sounding, and she just sounds, her voice is just really plugged in. And I love the song Afterlife. I think that's great. And the band, I think that she really is hitting her stride with this. I mean, I did enjoy her last album, the one that was sort of about her house burning down in one of the California wildfires. I mean, when I say I enjoy it, I don't mean I enjoyed that aspect, but I thought it was a good album. But I think this one musically is a little more like direct, sort of, and I would like to hear her do more like this. She's kind of moving away a little bit from the folk rock kind of thing and doing a little more sort of retro kind of, and when I say retro, I mean sort of 80s inspired kind of rock. So all right, so Sharon Van Etten at number 16. Number 15, I have to be careful when I show this cover. It's the Horrors and their latest album, Nightlife. And what a great album this is. And it also, I can't show the back because there's also body parts and whatever. But it's sort of a it's sort of a post-punk album. The Horrors have been through a lot of different phases. They started as kind of an edgy, punky, like vampiric type band, and then they sort of got more gloomy and then kind of sunny. They like started playing in major keys and had like lots of synths, and it was like beautiful textures and kind of psychedelic and almost shoegazy. Not typical shoegaze because it was almost too synth. But and then their last record about 8 years ago, they really were kind of hitting like a Depeche Mode sort of vibe, New Order, and they just kind of went away. They did a couple EPs during COVID that were like the screamo stuff of the early years that did not resonate with people, and so they were like, "What are we gonna do?" And this is sort of what they came up with, which was they did get a new keyboard player. The last guy was great anyway, but it's definitely a little more sort of atmospheric, but it does have that kind of Depeche Mode quality to it. And the last track is really great, LA Runaway. It's a song sort of about, the lead singer, his father lived in Gaza, I believe, or is in that part of the world, Palestinian, I believe, and he was flying off to Los Angeles to mix the album, and he's like, all I can think of is I'm worrying about my dad, And the song LA Runaway is kind of like this sort of kind of wistful but haunting type song. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. I enjoy the way that their songs build too. They do a really good job sort of building the song. So the Horrors at number 15. Number 14, Stereolab. And their first album in like 10 years, Instant Holograms on Metal Film. So if you like 60s kind of throwback, psychedelic lounge pop, like bands like Air, and stuff like that, I highly recommend this. I mean, Letitia has kind of a dark sort of alto voice, but the music is very like retro and it's fun. The band is extremely talented. And I just think they had a member who passed away back in like the late aughts and or early teens, and they never really recaptured their sound after that. This is like the first thing I've heard from them in a really long time that I'm like, this can stand up with like Dots and Loops and Emperor Tomato Ketchup as like a really good Stereolab record. So definitely check that out. I like the retro stuff a lot, obviously. Speaking of retro, now that was number 14. Number 13, I got to see these guys live this year again, and just they're so much fun. Mad by Sparks. And this is their 26th, 27th, 28th album. I think 26th. They've been making records since the early 70s. They're brothers. Ron just turned 80 2 weeks before I saw him. Russell just turned 77. Russell has the matinee good looks and the sort of operatic vocals. Ron writes all the songs. Ron writes songs that are all like, I wish I looked better. Why don't girls like me? Russell is the one that sings them. So it's kind of funny having that come out of the attractive lead singer's voice. But this is a great pop record. It's got some weirdness to it too. Mostly keyboard based, but they've got a really cracking live band now that are just really, really energetic. And I think there were moments of that concert that were the loudest, rockinest moments of any show I saw all year. So it does feature the song Do Things My Own Way and the other single Jansport Backpack, a song about a backpack, how it makes him sad. And the last two songs here, a little bit of light banter and Lord Have Mercy, are kind of throwbacks to old Sparks of the 70s, which were a little more sort of glammy and theatrical and fun. And then later in the year, they released a 4-track EP. So you got those 12 songs and then four more, 16. And this was the EP Matter, which featured the single Porcupine, which has a hysterical video. So if you want to go watch that, you can. But I just think they're super creative all the time and a lot of fun and weird, but like good weird. Okay. And at number 12, I chose this artist because I think that he needs more promotion, and I really enjoy his music. And he doesn't do albums that frequently that come out commercially. But Steve Gunn and his album Daylight Daylight, and he's from Delaware County. He used to be one of Kurt Weill's guitar players, and he's just an excellent guitar player. Went solo, did his own sort of writing, and so he released this album, Daylight Daylight, which has 7 vocal tracks, and then he also released just before that, so people were sort of confused, Music for Writers, which is a 10 track, as a 10 track instrumental album. It's a very sort of ambient. It's almost like if Brian Eno played guitar more on his ambient records. A lot of like ambient sort of finger plucked acoustic guitar and textures, like keyboard textures. And so this one is more vocal, same kind of textures and things, but they kind of make a nice pair. I'm not sure why he didn't just release them as a double album. Maybe he thought, well, with prices, people can choose one or the other, whatever. But it kind of reminds me of things like David Sylvian's Gone to Earth. If you've ever heard that album, the first one is 7 songs and they're vocal, and the second is 10 ambient tracks. And that's exactly what we have here. A little less jazzy than that record, but still a beautiful modern folk pop record. So, Steve Gunn. Number 11. Here's someone I just missed in Philly, and I wish I hadn't, because he doesn't come around that often. Hopefully, he'll come around more. Patrick Wolf and his new album, Crying the Neck. Now, Patrick hadn't made an album for like 10 years, and he had a lot of problems. He basically lost faith in the business. His mom died. He had a lot of like substance abuse issues to contend with. He really got back on track, and he is like sounding better than ever. He's got this kind of croony voice. It's like a deep sort of baritone, but he also plays the violin like, I mean, is a really talented player. Plays keyboards, plays all sorts of stringed instruments, and really is kind of a one-man show. And it's great what he can do so much by himself. But he also has things on this album like a church handbell choir. The lead single had Zola Jesus doing a duet with him. She's got this really kind of neat, sort of raspy, low alto voice. Some of the songs have kind of light, sort of airy arrangements, sort of a tribute to his mother, and other songs are a little bit more sort of anthemic in the way that like Chris Martin can be with Coldplay, but it doesn't come off like sort of I don't want to say trite. It doesn't come off as like too like grandstanding like that. It's a little bit more just sort of like anthemic and whatever. And there's beautiful imagery. Patrick Wolf, number 11, Crying the Neck. Okay, the top 10 for me. And some of these people, you're going to be like, I knew he was going to put that in there. My number 10 album. This guy hadn't made an album also for about 7 years, but he was busy scoring things for film like the last Wonka movie, or helping score that and writing songs for it. That would be Divine Comedy and Neil Hannon. And I really enjoyed his new album called Rainy Sunday Afternoon. It's much more moody than his last album, Office Politics. This one, he does so much of this, the writing and everything himself. But it's kind of like a little bit mixtures of things. There's a really great kind of song on here called All the Pretty Lights that's kind of reminiscent of Christmas. Like it's sort of about a child's wonder at Christmas, and it sounds like he's telling stories about himself with his parents and how they'd go to the city and look at the lights and what it was like to sit around the tree with his brothers and stuff like that as a kid. That's a really great song. Also, I mean, he just writes songs about what he sees and feels. The Man Who Turned Into a Chair is a song about sort of being depressed and not knowing what to do. And his wife says, if you sit in that chair too long, you're going to turn into a chair. And so that's kind of like where that's coming from. But the song The Last Time I Saw the Old Man is about his father who had Alzheimer's and passed away. And that's a very kind of heavy, depressing song on here. But then later on, you get Mar-a-Lago by the Sea, which really skewers the whole sort of like lifestyle of the Mar-a-Lago folk. And Invisible Thread at the end is also a beautiful song. It's about his daughter sort of growing up, and that we always have a connection to the kids in our lives, and which is ironic. At one point, maybe like 20 years ago, he had an album where the last song was about his daughter being born, and how that changed his life. And here's another song 20 years later that's just as good. That's sort of about the two of them and their connection. And she actually sings on the song with him too. So it's even more heartfelt. That's a great album. Number 10, Divine Comedy and Rainy Sunday Afternoon. Just a really good, like, very strong pop singer-songwriter album. Number 9, Viagra Boys with Viagra Boys. Uh, Another great album from a Swedish sort of punk rock pop group. Although the lead singer is American. And well, there's a lot of great tracks on here. I mean, it's always so visceral, and they're so observational. I really like songwriters who write like about things that you don't necessarily think of. Oh, I would write a song about that. And there's a song on here called Uno 2 that's about his dog going to the vet, and it's kind of from the dog's perspective. And the dog's saying, like, where are you taking me? Who's this guy that's working on me? What's he gonna do with my teeth? He pulled my tooth. Where's he going? Like, it's just kind of a funny observation. Man Made of Meat, the first track was a great single. It was kind of like sort of like, what is a man, basically, like, what are we doing here? And it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's just kind of punky poppy fun. But I really like their last album, Cave World, and that I think this one is just ever so slightly not as good as that one, but it is also very, very good. So enough to be in my top 10. Viagra Boys. At number 8, this album, confusing. Eusexua by FKA Twigs. So Twigs is a British soul singer, sort of pop singer, avant-garde, does these odd album covers a lot. This is not completely what she looks like. This has been tweaked by computers. And this was kind of her tribute to like Madonna's Ray of Light. It's a very sort of poppy, but not trite, but a poppy sort of electronic album. And a lot of great songs on it. Eusexua was kind of like her creating a new word for a feeling that she had about being intimate. And she wanted to do something a little different with that. But Girl Feels Good was a very much like, sounded like it could have been straight from Madonna's Ray of Light. But then you'd get like a song like Drums of Death, which is like a really heavy pounding sort of rhythmics track, sort of different on this record. Some things are very intimate sounding, and then some things are very big and boomy sounding. Later in the year, back at the end of November, she reissued this album. She took 4 songs off of it, including the single Perfect Stranger, and replaced them with 4 other songs. Now, was the other version of the album any better? It was about as good. It wasn't better, it wasn't worse for me. Some people liked it better. But then you're like, well, which version of the album is the album? What is the album? And it's always changing. You don't really know. So anyway, I would say this is still a great album. There was another bonus album that she also put out that same day that had 11 more tracks, and that's coming out on vinyl. And that will probably be in my top 10 of next year also. But I couldn't include it this year because no vinyl, no CD. Excuse me. So anyway, and that one is called Eusexua Afterglow. So there's 2 versions of the actual Eusexua album though. So I'm going to go with the first version because that's what I have on vinyl. But I do like the second version too. and hopefully that comes out. But then I'll probably be buying half of the tracks again. I don't know. These artists, and they're playing with all of the formats and everything. Number 7, Madison Cunningham and her album Ace. And she's a kind of folk pop singer. And this was her divorce album this year. And it's very tender, kind of a lot of beautiful arrangements, things where you think songs are ending and they fade out and then they fade back in. There's a really beautiful duet with Robin Pecknold of Fleet Foxes on here. And I suppose it's not the kind of music that I always necessarily am drawn to, but if I find them to be extremely talented, or like she does things with her voice that I think are amazing that a lot of typical folk singers cannot do. And so, and beautiful, haunting performances. I love Madison Cunningham's Ace, number 7. And she is American. Number 6, Miki Berenyi Trio and her album Tripla. Now, Miki was from the band Lush and British shoegaze band. And after Lush, the reunion sort of, well, it disintegrated. She and Emma did not get along after they got back together. So she did put together a band called Parashka, and they did 2 albums. It featured her husband Moose of the band Moose, who was also a UK shoegaze guy. And other members were like, I think they had a guy from Modern English in the band. And he since left. He like broke his arm and just decided to stay in the US. It was too hard to kind of like keep going back and forth between the US and the UK, and she's in the UK. So they got a different collaborator and went by Miki Berenyi Trio, or 3. And this album was great. If you like shoegaze, if you like 90s rock like Lush, or other things of that kind of, sort of like Cocteau Twins or whatever, this is really great stuff. And they even released a single after this album called Doldrum Days, and there's like a couple of bonus tracks too that you get in the digital version that aren't on this. But I do love the album as it stands. I think the last song really is great. Is it Ubiqui? I don't know. Can't say it. Ubiqui. Anyway, it's a great song. Hurricane is great. I love this is the second song. Kinch. Kinch is really a great sort of tribute to their drummer from Lush, Chris Auckland, who'd committed suicide by hanging himself. That was the end of Lush originally. So, but that is a beautiful song. And the first track, very new ordery in a way. I just really like this album. So, Miki Berenyi Trio. I missed her on her tour. She didn't play Philly. She went from New York to DC or whatever, and I couldn't make it. And she says, "I'm not coming to the US again. It's too expensive." It's she runs down the costs of what it's like to tour, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's so much money. So, all right, so we got the top 5. Top 5 people. Number 5, These New Puritans. You're like, what? These New Puritans and their album Crooked Wing. So these are a couple of brothers. Their names escape me. I have other albums by them. I love all of their albums. They're very atmospheric type albums. They don't have a lot of melodic stuff. They're usually more texture-based music. If you like things like late period talk, this is for you, I think. It's very just all about sound. And this album features a lot of really cool sounds. It starts and ends with the sound of a choir boy singing very high, a beautiful voice, British. And then a lot of the album features church organs, like pipe organs. Apparently, it was the church organ that the brothers that their dad used to play in the church where they grew up. There's also a lot of bells. In fact, the second track is called Bells, and you hear a lot of bells throughout the album, a lot of interesting drumming, rhythmic, sort of almost like battlefield drums type of things. The lead singer's voice is very mumbly. Like there's not much that you can understand all the time. And even when I pulled out the lyric sheet and I'm reading along, some of it is like where I'm getting lost here, and of course the lyric sheet folds out into this huge thing, so it's kind of like hard to read. But I think that's all intentional. And also, I recommend the song "Industrial Love Song," which features the singer Caroline Polachek in a duet with the lead singer here, and it's a song about two cranes, and I don't mean birds, I mean cranes that sit on top of buildings, and it's a love song from each crane to each other, and how they can't really ever touch or be together because they're metal cranes. But it's a short but beautiful song in the middle of this album. It was kind of put out there as the original single, but anyway, if you like atmospheric music, like the kind of more sort of like quirky side of Kate Bush when she gets more sort of like it's all about texture and vibe and like, telling a story or something, this is a really interesting, cool album. I do love it. It's my number 5. These New Puritans and Crooked Wing. Number 4, the London Suede, aka Suede, and Antidepressants. They're only called the London Suede in America because we have a singer named Suede here who is a folk singer or jazz singer that still refuses to give up the whole thing, and so they have to keep calling themselves London Suede. And of course they printed it on the record that way, just so if you're in America, you know that you have something that's not quite right. Anyway, this is a great album from Brett Anderson and company. I mean, this is their 6th album since reforming back in like 2012 or so. Brett's drug problems the first time around got the best of them, and they had to take a break after their 5th album. And they took about 10 years off. After a couple of years, Brett got clean and sober. He started making solo albums. He made like 3 or 4. Wrote a book, and a couple autobiographical books, and then started making albums with the band again. And each album has gotten successively stronger. And they really, in the last 4 or 5 albums, some of them rival the albums that they did in the early days with how good they are. So anyway, this one is a little bit more post-punk. At times I hear like major Cure influence on this. And Brett's voice, like he's just as on fire it's like the Peter Murphy. These guys are getting older. They've had sort of health issues, but oh my gosh, their voices are just, as it's sort of like the whole old, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing. And the fact that they're using it so much is what's keeping them sort of going, I think. But anyway, number 3, Suede, Antidepressants. It's sort of, it's not as much of a concept album as some of their other recent ones, but it is sort of about like kind of looking back on life and how you've changed, I suppose. All right, my top 3 for the year. Number 3, this probably won't be, I don't know if any of these, well, don't think they're going to be surprises. Maybe. Number 3, Pulp, Jarvis Cocker and Company, and the album More. So, of course, if I have at number 4, I got to have Suede and Pulp at number 3. 2 of the greatest sort of Britpop bands of the last 40 years. And Pulp hadn't made an album in 20 some years. Jarvis Cocker had made some solo records. Their bass player, Steve Mackey, did not participate because he had health problems and passed away. So it's a little bit of a bittersweet album, but it does do a really good job of paying homage to what Pulp sort of were about in the 90s and since. Produced by James Ford, who's done work with Arctic Monkeys, Depeche Mode, you name it, he's produced them. Pet Shop Boys. Anyway, there's some really great songs on here. Grown Ups is just a really great song about like coming to terms with the fact that you're older. There's songs about being older. The song Got to Have Love is kind of a great sort of dance pop song, sort of a thing about Jarvis finally realized how important love is at his age, and so he's finally talking about that. Things like Farmer's Market, which is the song about like you know sort of running into somebody at a farmer's market, and like how connected they figure that they are on emotional levels. Tina and My Sex are typical, and Slow Jam too are kind of typical Jarvis musings on like what it's like to be an older person and still have like desires and things like that. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's definitely a very like personal look into his psyche, I think. And I think a lot of people who are in that age group, such as myself, I'm not quite as old as him, but can relate to those sorts of things. So, anyway, Pulp and More, a welcome return. I'm really glad that Canada is participating. She has, what do you call it? Arthritis. She has rheumatoid arthritis, and it's very difficult for her to play. She has kind of like almost like a deformed hand situation, but she manages to get around it and loves being in the band. And she and Jarvis are pretty much at the center of Pulp, and it's great. It's great seeing them back together. Okay, last two. Number two. I think they might have had my number two or number three album last year. Saint Etienne, and another album called International. Now, they planned this to be their last album. They say that, I think it's their 12th. They said, we want to go out with a bang. Our last album is going to be a pretty big return to pop. Now, their last two records, they usually always made sort of retro pop, kind of synthetic pop, dance pop, British pop, whatever you call it. And their record that they made during the pandemic was a definite shift. It didn't really have much of Sarah's vocal at all. It was made up of a lot of like loops of songs and kind of more ambient and kind of very slowed down rhythms. And it was kind of a controversial album because it didn't really feature her at all, and people were sort of like, "Why?" And but I think that a few people liked it. But then the next album, which they put out last year, I really enjoyed, which was The Night, and that was more of a folky, wintry album that was more about like ambient like stuff, like the sound of snow falling, or like what rain on streets and people walking in the rain, and had that kind of a vibe. This album is not that. This is like, they're like, we really wanted to just pay homage to our pop roots and go out with a bang. So this 12 tracks, the singles have had lots of bonus tracks too, but and they're very hard to get. But and a lot of collaborators on this. The first track, Glad, so they called up a lot of people that they either knew or wanted to work with. The first single, Glad, a first track on here, was a collaboration with one of the Chemical Brothers. So it has a very kind of like heavy beat to it, but it's still upbeat, like a kind of a song like Don't Get Down, There's a Lot of Good in the World kind of song. And also, one of the guys from the Doves plays guitar on it. There also the Go Betweens features guest vocals from Nick Hayward of Haircut 100, band from like 1982 or whatever. But he's got a great voice, and that's kind of a fun duet. Take Me to the Pilot features a member of the band Orbital, which is more of a dancey, clubby techno type song, more loopy. Brand New Me is a very poppy song, kind of like their old hit, Nothing, Nothing Can Stop Us Now. Other people who appear on this record in one way or another: Vince Clarke of Erasure and Depeche Mode fame, and Yaz. He's takes part in Two Lovers. Anyway, so really, there's other people too. This is a really great kind of pop record and a farewell, very strong record from them. And it's not something that I think was gonna set the charts on fire. But if I wanted to say like, what is my favorite pop, like pure pop record of the year, it's International by Saint Etienne, and it's their last. So it's kind of like I don't know, bittersweet in a way. I'm glad to hear them do that. I wish in a way that they would just, instead of saying this is our last, find a way to work around it, do more albums like The Night, which was kind of cool, more ambient type stuff, and then keep reissuing like your old stuff or whatever. But I don't know, Bob's too busy writing books, and they have other things they want to do. So, and you start hitting like your late 50s, early 60s, and you're like, there's, how much time do I want to devote to this when I've got X amount of time? So I get that. It's hard being a rock star for your entire life, don't you think? I mean, well, I'm not, but I mean, all right, my number one album of the year. You've been waiting 47 minutes, so my voice is giving out, so I need to show it. Jens Lekman, Songs for Other People's Weddings. And again, I feel really guilty that I missed him in Philly. He was just here like 2 weeks ago, but it was like I was trying to get ready for Black Friday and I just didn't have time. So, yeah, Jens is a really great singer-songwriter from Sweden. Sweden? Norway? I can't remember. I think it's Sweden. And his stuff is very kind of like folk poppy, fun, humorous, a lot of humor. I don't know. I would sort of put him in a category if I had to do like artists who sound like him, or are similar. Sufjan Stevens, maybe Sandra Lerche, people like that who write kind of like humor songs, but songs that are sort of meaningful too. And so this album, it's a double album, quite a few tracks. There was a song here that was the first song I heard called Wedding in Leipzig. That's about 10 minutes long. And there is a video for it. It's animated. If you want to watch it, it's on YouTube. And basically, it's the story of him playing music for a wedding. And halfway through the song, it sort of breaks down and it talks about how he's sitting at a table with a woman who's sort of like Marge Simpson. And she starts telling him this heartfelt story about an unrequited love that she'd had, that she wished that, had gone a different way. And I think that this album, so the overall concept, it is a concept record, and it took him a few years to make it. And then there's also he participated in a book. I'm trying to remember who the author is right now. Of course, I don't have it in front of me, but there is a book that goes along with this that is actually like telling or describing more of the stories here. But Jens does it in music, and it's basically the tale of He's a wedding singer. He's basically himself, okay? And he had a song at one point in time that said, "If you need a singer for a wedding, give me a call because I might be available." And it actually started happening to him. People were calling him up and saying, or emailing and saying, "Will you come perform at my wedding?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, I could use a little extra money." As he says in one song, Spotify wasn't making all the payments, so I'll do that. And so he goes and plays it. This is the story of him at all of these weddings, and they're just so humorous. There's one wedding that he plays at where it's a gay wedding, and there's two guys that are standing at a urinal, and it's like he's talking to them, and they're like in a suit that's made for like two people, but it's connected into one. So it's like talks about like them trying to find the fly, and like it's funny. And then people were invited to the wedding, and they had to come dressed as their favorite song. And he said that he dressed up with all sorts of balloons attached to him, so he thought he was going as Nana's 99 Luff balloons. But then everyone started thinking that he was Raspberry Beret instead because he looked like a raspberry. Anyway, with that aside, he meets a woman at the wedding, and they kind of start a romantic relationship, and then they can never seem to make it work because he's always traveling for all of these wedding performances, and she ends up going to New York to like get a career going or do work or whatever. And it's like it's kind of like a sad, it's like a story of like someone who's watching all of these things, these wonderful, beautiful uniting of people's lives, and he can't get his own love life together because he has to survive and make money to play at all these weddings. So anyway, I think it would actually make a great Broadway show at some point. But there's some really beautiful songs on here. And Jens actually too, he does a lot where he usually kind of does sort of just kind of a little bit of like looping and stuff like that, and then kind of mixes it with folk stuff. But he actually kind of like does a little bit more exploring of musical styles on this because it's such a long album. It's maybe like an hour and 20 minutes or so. It's quite long, but it's I never get bored or tired of it. And you just kind of get a lot of visuals of him traveling and what the songs mean and everything. So my number one of the year, Jens Lekman, songs for other people's weddings. He had another album called Night in Cortadala that I highly recommend too. That's got a lot of really fun songs. So maybe you want to start there and then plunge in with this. This is the kind of album that once you hear it from the beginning, you kind of want to stay with it to hear the whole story. So it's one of those albums that it works okay on its own if you take songs out and hear them, but it's almost better as a whole. So, all right, number one. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. I appreciate that. And I always enjoy doing these. It's a big effort to do it and put them all together. But I like sharing all of this, and I would love to see some of your lists as well. So if you're on your computer or whatever, or phone, and you want to post down below, that'd be great. I'd love to read them so we can share notes. All right. Thanks. And have a wonderful end of 2025. And I'll see you again in 2026. And a lot of this stuff I mentioned today, well, you know that you're going to be seeing Lily Allen, FKA Twigs, and De La Soul on my list for 2026. So, all right. Peace. Thanks again. See you next time. Ooh, new release coming soon.